All right, guys. Shem Hashem Na'aseh v'Natzliach. This is very special. We're at the end. The last Melacha of 39 Melachot. Baruch Shechianu v'Kiyimanu v'Gianu Hazman Hazeh. Learning Melechet Hotsa'ah. Very, very important Melacha. Most of Masechet Shabbat, and I would say the entire or most of Masechet Eruvin, they all talk about this Melacha called Hotsa'ah. Hotsa'ah means the idea that on Shabbat, we are not allowed to carry from one domain to another, from a private domain to a public domain, or from other issues. Like, for example, we're going to learn about a Carmelit, which is an area that is not considered to be a private or a public domain. We cannot carry from a private domain to a Carmelit or vice versa. We're going to talk about what that means. And also in a public domain, we cannot carry 4 amot in that area. Now let's just understand, where is this coming from? Carrying on Shabbat. What's the problem with carrying? You think to yourself, you can't light a fire on Shabbat. You can't cook on Shabbat, but carrying, where on earth did that come from? So first of all, before we begin, we'd like to dedicate tonight's learning for the Refuah Shema of Kol Cholei Yisrael. We'd like to dedicate tonight's learning that for the safety of the Chayalim, they go safely, come home safely, and they should bring with them all those that are held captive, bring them back to their families, B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, so this is one of the most unique melachot in Shabbat, because in the construction of the Mishkan, they had to first of all bring many donations from private homes to the public area where Moshe was. For example, you had gold you wanted to donate to build the Mishkan. You had silver you wanted to donate to build the Mishkan. You had all kinds of things that you wanted to donate in order to build the Mishkan, all kinds of different animals, whatever it was. You had to bring them from your private tent, wherever you were in the desert, to where Moshe Rabbeinu was in public. Moshe Rabbeinu and his family, and Aaron and the Levim, they were in the center of the encampment of the Jewish people. All the other tribes were surrounding them. They were in the middle. So they were in like the public domain. You had to leave your tent, carry something, bring it to the center, and that was the public domain. So that's called carrying from private to public. Yeah. And therefore, since that was done in order to build the Mishkan, that's what we are not allowed to do on Shabbat. Okay. Now,
so they carried offerings to the big
donations.
They
correct.
Carried donations.
Correct. Not only that, but says the Gemara, they also stretched things from public domain to private domain. What we're going to learn is that there's such a thing as having a private domain in the middle of a public domain. So for example, says the Gemara, the carriages that they used to carry the big beams, those carriages were on big wagons that had certain dimensions, and because they are an interference in the public domain, in other words, if let's say I put a car in the middle of a public domain, can you walk through that car? No, it's interfering. So it takes up its own space. So you have to walk around it. So this car gets the status of a private domain in the middle of a public domain. So therefore, if you take something and you put it on that car, in this case, in the construction of the Mishkan, what they did was they took beams and they put the beams, which is what they used to build the Mishkan. They would take it and put it from the public area onto those carts. That was an act of carrying from the public domain to the private domain. So we have private to public, the donations. We also have public to private. So all of that is forbidden. And they also had to actually carry them in the public domain. It's brought down that it's a halacha Moshe Sinai that in the public domain, you're not allowed to carry 4 amot. So even if, let's say, you didn't bring it from a private domain, it was just there. For example, somebody left whatever you want, a hat in the middle of the street. You want to pick it up. You're not allowed to carry that hat 4 amot. 4 amot is like 6 feet. If you carry that hat, you move it from point A to point B in the public domain 6 feet, that is considered to be one of the 39 melachot on Shabbat. Oh, great question. So the answer to that is, she's asking, why couldn't they make an eruv? Okay, so that's a great question. And it has to do with the understanding that a public domain is, if it's a real public domain, it's always going to be a public domain. You can't really do anything about it. An eruv around a bunch of, an eruv around the city, if it's a real public domain, does nothing. What is the eruv that we have nowadays? The eruv that we have nowadays is a string that is put up in between 2 poles, and the idea is it looks like an entrance. It looks like a gate. It's called Surat HaPetach. It has the appearance of an opening, and that does nothing for a real public domain. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have an area like Brooklyn. Brooklyn, according to most authorities, is considered to be a real public domain. So to put up a string around the city of Brooklyn doesn't really do anything for you. When something is a real public domain, you cannot, what? No. So we're going to talk about what makes something into a public domain, right? There's a whole big dispute, but let's just, if we're already talking about it, let's jump right into it. The idea of a public domain is the following. If you have an area that has in it the amount of people that were traveling in the desert. Remember, all the halachot of Shabbat come from the construction of the Mishkan in the desert, right? So if you have this amount of people, which is 600,000 Jewish men, right? You don't need them to be Jewish, but you have 600,000 people traveling through an area on any day. They always have people traveling through this place. So then according to the halakha, that place gets the status of a public domain. That's the lenient opinion. Okay. There are others that are even more machmir, but according to all opinions, if you have 600,000 people traveling through a certain location on a daily basis, so then that place gets the status of a public domain. And therefore you cannot put a string around it because it is a public domain. When can you use the method of a string? That's for a domain that is not really a public domain, but still the rabbis said don't carry there. So for example, according to that opinion that says that it's only a public domain if you have 600,000 people traveling through that area every day, Great Neck, for example, would not be considered a public domain. So then what is it? The answer is it's what we call Carmelit. Carmelit means it's a place that is not public, but it's also not private because it's not any one person's area. People are traveling on Middle Neck Road, they're traveling on Beach Road, they're traveling always back and forth. So Chazal said, look, it's very similar to a public domain, but it's not really. So we're not going to let you carry there unless you do something to make it like it's one big area. Like it's as if it's one home, one area that everyone lives in, one big house. So they are the ones who made the issue in the first place, and they're the ones that said, but if you do this, meaning you put up this string and you make it as if it's one big area, so now you could carry over there. Okay? That's the concept in a very brief nutshell, the idea of eruv. Okay? That's what it accomplishes. It makes it like we're all in one place. But remember, the whole thing only begins because in the first place, it wasn't really a problem on a Torah level to carry there. Just Chazal said, don't do it. Okay, we don't do it, but if we do it this way, it's okay. Clear?
But some people, like even in Great Neck, I've like encountered some people and they don't hold by this error.
Right.
So why?
Right. There's a very good reason why. I'll tell you why. Because the problem with any eruv, no matter where you are, is that in 2 seconds, their roof can go down. I mean, it's so easy. One oversized truck drives by and knocks the wire down. That's it. The whole city is out because the whole thing is connected at one in one as one. That's what connects the whole thing. So what? Last week there was a problem by the hospital. The hospital roof was down last week, right? Not the city roof. Right? So thankfully they caught that on time and they sent out a message, and therefore you were not allowed to carry over there in the vicinity that you would normally be allowed to carry in the hospital. But we'll get to inside the hospital if you carry anyway. Yeah.
What is allowed?
Okay. So meaning when there's no eruv?
No. Yes, no eruv. Yes.
When there's no eruv. So we'll get to that.
But
We'll
like-
get to that. Excellent. Yeah.
but so then, like, what are you supposed to do? Like, is it really best not to carry anything?
So no, the answer to that is that we have a rule in Torah called Chazakah. Chazakah means that if we checked at the onset of Shabbat and we have no reason to assume that anything has changed, we're allowed to assume that the status that we had at the beginning of Shabbat remained the same. So that's why every Thursday night they go out, they check it, and they analyze and they see that everything is okay. See, that's also part of a reason why people wouldn't want to rely on an eruv. Maybe they know that they're not checking it as often as they should be. And even if it was put up originally by somebody who knows what he's doing, but if you don't upkeep it, you see these guys, the crews that work on their roof, they're like the telephone company. They have these big trucks that they go up and they check the wires and they make sure that each thing is on properly. If it's not on properly, if it's slanting, there are lots of rules about it. So then if you know, for example, that they're not checking properly, which Baruch Hashem in Great Neck, we don't have that problem. They check fantastically every week. And we pay for that. All the shuls, Baruch Hashem, got together and we have a budget for their roof and we pay for it, that it should be done right, which is very good. But the point is, if let's say that it doesn't have the proper upkeep that it deserves, it's not getting the attention that it deserves. So therefore, people would say, "Well, I'm not relying on that eruv. It's not being done properly."
But
You
is
understand?
it like the fact that some people don't hold by the eruv? Is it better not to hold by it? I don't know, because it's a little bit like.
So again, you're allowed to hold by it. You're allowed to hold by it. If you decide you don't want to hold by it as a stringency, that's your own personal thing. I'll tell you a true story.
But is it
I heard.
better?
Listen to the story. Okay, listen to a very interesting story. I don't know if I told you the story before. I might have told you the story in the past, but I remember hearing this story. I guess close to 20 years ago from Chacham David Yosef. He told me this story in Yerushalayim. And when he was here recently, a couple of years ago, I asked him again just to make sure I got the details right. And he said, yes, you got it right. So here's the story. The story was that he and his wife and his baby were in Rechavia in Yerushalayim together with his father, Chacham Ovadia. And Rechavia is a very hilly area, lots of hills. Yerushalayim in general has lots of hills. So, they're climbing up this big hill in Rechavia. And what happened was he was very strict not to rely on the eruv. And his wife was pushing the stroller of the baby up the hill in Rechavia. And his father called him to the side and said, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "What do you mean?" He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "What am I doing?" He says, "You're letting your wife push the stroller?" He says, "Yeah." He's like, Why are you pushing the stroller? Why aren't you pushing the stroller? Because I'm strict on the eruv. He said to him, "Before you're strict on the eruv, be strict on being a mensch and push the stroller." True story from Chacham Ovadia. So I wasn't sure if I remember the details right. So he was here maybe 2 years ago, and he said, "You got the story perfectly right." And his son was with him. He says, "And this guy was the baby." He points to that guy. That guy was the baby. It happened with him. So, yes, ideally, want to be strict. That's a fantastic, wonderful thing, and not carry. Beautiful. But if it's coming at somebody else's expense, then there's room to be lenient, and therefore be lenient. So that's if you could do that, that's a shinui. So that in the worst case, if the eruv is out for whatever reason, you're able to go ahead and do it with a shinui. Okay, so let's talk about things that you can carry when there is no eruv. Every now and then you find yourself in a place where there is no eruv. So what can you carry? What is considering carrying? What is considered to be carrying? What's not? Sure. Manhattan, I believe, falls in the same category as Brooklyn. Manhattan is the same. Yeah, you see, the thing is, with places like this, you see, there's a big dispute amongst the authorities. I don't want to just knock off the other authorities, but most poskim hold that a place like Brooklyn
I know Brooklyn
doesn't
does not
have.
any.
See, there are certain
So people,
parts.
so women can't go to synagogue.
Correct.
Babies.
Correct.
That's the.
When they have babies, they're stuck at home.
Yeah,
If they
they're
don't
stuck
carry.
at home.
True.
Yeah.
There are certain areas that don't have this problem, even in Brooklyn, because they have dead ends. And if you have a dead end and it's not open on both sides, you could technically seal off one area by making a eruv on the block. That's technically no. I'm saying any street, any block that has a dead end, technically you could make an eruv over there and carry at least in that block. But usually most of the poskim say that it's a problem to rely on the eruv over there, and I would imagine Manhattan is no different. It's the same issue. Okay, so what can you carry in a place where there is no eruv? So let's say you have orthopedic supports in a shoe, inserts. That's considered to be part of the shoe. It's not called carrying. You have a reflector belt. You want to wear the reflector belt. You're wearing it as a garment. That's not a problem. So you can go ahead and wear it as a belt, no problem. Okay, person has a hearing aid. Is the hearing aid called carrying? No, because it's for his ear. He needs to be able to hear the sounds of the traffic, etc. What about a pocket watch? Pocket watch? No, that's carrying an item. That's carrying an object. So you cannot carry a pocket watch. It doesn't enhance your appearance. It's concealed. What?
I remember when it was we didn't have ever because of Sandy.
Yeah.
So I hung the key on a necklace. They said no.
Correct. You can't do that. Yeah, no, you should not hang keys on necklaces. That would not be okay.
So what he would care.
But I have
What?
jewelry that's keys. Like I have a necklace that has 2 keys on it.
But it's not key.
That's not
So
considered.
it's not a functioning key. It's just a piece of jewelry. It looks like that, right? That's something else. Okay, fine. A wristwatch would not be considered a problem.
Are you allowed to put on a wristwatch? Let's say, let's say someone, you didn't have your watch on Shabbat. Let's say someone gave you your watch to put on. Is that okay? Or is that not
Meaning
okay?
because of carrying?
No, just like, is it muksa?
So no, it's not
A what?
muktzeh at all. It's not muktzeh. Unless it's off and you have to turn it on, like we were saying before.
You mean with the battery?
Like if you're shaking it to turn it on for the first time, that's a problem. No, wristwatch is not a problem. Some say it's okay because it's like something you want to display. Like for example, Chametzion says a lot of people would even wear the wristwatch if the battery died because it's so nice. Look, I have I don't know whatever kind of fancy watch. It's like a an item of jewelry. So therefore, if that's the case, they would allow you to do it. Rav Moshe held that in a real Reshut Rabim, a Talmid Chacham should not wear it. But again, technically, Mi'ikar Adin, it's okay. Okay. Eyeglasses are not a problem because without them, you can't see clearly. But you cannot carry them or wear your reading glasses. So let's say I want to...
Sunglasses.
Wait, one second. Let's talk about reading glasses, right? Reading glasses, if I need them for reading and I want to wear them, I can't do that now because I'm not reading as I'm walking. That would be like carrying them. Understand? Is it clear or no?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, great. Sunglasses where there is no roof should be avoided because we are concerned you'll get to a shady spot, you'll take them off. You might come to carry them.
What if you bring it up here?
It's carrying. Yeah, that's called carrying. Can you wear gloves? Sure. Earmuffs? Sure. You're wearing them. So if your shoelaces are untied, or your sleeves are rolled up, or you have your jacket over your shoulders, technically that's still okay because you're still wearing it. But jacket over the shoulders, some say, is a little bit of a problem because it's like it's as if you're not really trying to carry. You're not trying to wear it. You just have to carry it. So therefore, some are more strict, but there's room to be lenient if you're actually wearing it in that kind of a style. Okay.
Or what about also like, those pouches and you put your baby in the pouch? That's
Yeah.
carrying.
That would be carrying the baby. Yeah, that's a problem. I saw even more than that. Let's say the skirt is a little bit too long, so they fold it at the waist, right? So you fold the skirt, so that's considered also okay because it's extra. It's extra material. What?
Who would do such a thing?
Apparently, people do that. I even saw pants that are folded on the bottom, extra material. That's considered to be carrying. It's extra. Okay.
You know what? Stay home.
Again, this is where you don't have the roof.
Skirt and this and that. No, I'm saying people that they don't have
Yeah.
roof, they should stay home.
Okay. What? Can't carry that. Right. Let's say you forgot
You
your
can't bring your keys.
what?
You can't bring your
No, it's carrying. Let's see.
What about a jacket?
One
A
second.
jacket.
What?
What about a
Scarf
jacket?
is okay.
So if you're wearing
Scarf
a
is
jacket,
great.
is
That's
that-
okay.
Oh, really?
That's how it's getting dressed.
Oh, so you can't
Okay.
have a pocket for like, I mean, I don't. wear
Pocketbook,
pocketbook.
no.
No, I mean, I have Shabbat bags. Like I have a bag, it says Shabbat. That's my pocket. for
You
Shabbat.
don't carry that if there's no roof. Correct.
No, I'm saying that you can't wear
This
it.
is the big one. Pads, tampons, nursing pads. Very interesting. There's a rule about this in the Gemara. It talks about the difference between atzule tinuf versus sa'ar. Atzule tinuf means if you're simply trying to prevent becoming dirty, then that is not allowed. That's considered to be carrying. If you're trying to prevent suffering, however, okay, in other words, if this were to go on the person's body, it would dry up, it would cause them to be uncomfortable, they would suffer, so then that would be okay. So in other words, if it's just a question of preventing light staining or not to or just to save the clothing, that would be a problem. But if it's not about saving the clothing, it would actually go on the person's body and it would cause them to suffer, so then that would be okay.
I don't
So it depends on the
understand.
situation.
But I don't understand. What did you just say? What
Okay, let's do
about
it again.
suffering?
So again, if a person is going to be, let's say, emitting some kind of fluid wherever it's coming from, that's gonna go on the body and it's gonna harden on the body, and the person's gonna suffer because of that. So then that would be okay to wear whatever you need, a pad, tampon, nursing pad, whatever,
Oh.
stuff like that.
Oh, you're talking-
But if, let's say, it's not, it's just like it's a minor type of thing that's just gonna stain her clothes a little bit, and it's not really that big of a deal. She's not gonna suffer. It's just
Oh,
to
you
prevent herself from getting dirty, so
you
that
mean
you
to
can't.
carry- You're saying to carry it,
Is
or
that
to have
considered-
inside?
Is that in other words, is wearing a pad, is
Or
wearing a nursing pad, is that considered carrying when you don't have any roof or not? So the answer to that question is I guess it's going to depend on how heavy is it. In other words, how heavy is the flow? How heavy is what's coming out of her a lot, which would therefore, if it would go onto her body, would give her pain, it would cause her to suffer. Then she'd be allowed to go ahead and to put it wouldn't be called carrying. If it's actually just a small amount and it's not really doing much to her, just gonna stain her clothing, and she doesn't want that, so then to put that there just to prevent a little bit of staining, that's called carrying.
Really? But
Clear?
it's already
1 second. Was
inside.
that clear?
But
Okay,
it's not.
good.
But it's already inside. Why would it be? Wouldn't it be part of your bigadim?
Because it's
Because
not.
you're not like, because like
Yeah.
it's not like you're carrying it in a bag. It's like you're
That's the rule.
dressed with it.
Yeah, still,
Really?
that's the rule, yeah. Okay, let's go, let's move on. Prosthetic limbs, dentures,
Wow.
are those a problem? Is that a problem of carrying or not? The answer is no, because they're like your body parts. You can't walk without them. As a matter of fact, they even say that crutches are like a person's leg, the cane, which you're carrying the cane, but the cane is carrying you. It's like your leg, basically. So therefore, you'd be allowed to use it. A blind man can use the dog outside of their roof, because it's like his eyes.
Yes.
At the same time, however, he cannot have the stick because it's not like his leg. It's just to make sure that he's walking straight. So therefore, the dog would be okay. Apparently, the stick would be a problem. Okay, wheelchair. Is one allowed to wheelchair himself? The answer is yes. You could, even though there's no roof, but others cannot wheelchair him. However, they can help him lift him up on a curve, but not more. Okay. He must be seated when he's going in and out of Reshut HaYachid and Reshut HaRabim, because otherwise he's carrying the wheelchair in and out. So he has to be seated when he's indoors, and he wheels himself outdoors. So these are basically, the wheels become like his legs. And he's also cannot carry anything else in the wheelchair. He cannot bring a bag of something. It's just literally for himself. No bell that rings, etc. If you have a Band-Aid, is that called carrying? No, it's not. If you have a cream that was on you before Shabbat, is that considered carrying? No, it's not. That's
But
considered
are
to be
you
okay.
allowed to like bring like a little first aid kit?
What?
If your kids like get hurt? Like,
Are you
you know
allowed
how
to bring?
kids always get hurt?
Yeah, no,
So
you
are
should not
allowed
bring.
to
No,
bring,
you
like, a
cannot
little
carry.
first-
You cannot.
carry
It's
at all?
carrying. It's something totally separate. You cannot carry. It's one of the 39 melachot. If there's no roof, it's still right.
But it's to save a life.
What? Is it?
Actually, you
Is
know what? I
it?
have a little.
Is it really?
first aid kit
Nobody's
on.
hurt yet. Everybody's okay.
Because it's pikuach nefesh.
For the little scrapes that the kid might get.
You know,
Right?
better carry telephone and call that silent.
Okay.
Pikuach nefesh.
Okay, let's talk about carrying in a hospital or a hotel on Shabbat. Okay, so this is a very interesting thing that we have to understand. It's brought down Shlomo HaMelech. This is one of the interesting rules that was was created by King Solomon. King Solomon created two halachot, two things that he felt were really important to establish for the Jewish people. One of them was the mitzvah of Netilat Yadayim. Netilat Yadayim is a mitzvah that was established by King Solomon. The reason that we wash for bread was because King Solomon wanted us to be very careful with the foods that we touch, that we shouldn't make them impure if our hands are all over the place and they touch impure things. He wanted them to be pure, and he specifically wanted the Kohanim that eat truma, which is holy food, not to have dirty hands when they touch them, because that would defile it, so to say, and make it not usable. So he established Netilat Yadayim for the Jewish people. That's number one. Number two, he established the idea called Eruv Chatzerot. Eruv Chatzerot means that if, let's say, my family and your family are neighbors, and we share a common courtyard, so we have an area together that we both share. So the halacha says, since it's an enclosed area, let's say that both you and I, we live in an area that's enclosed by a wall. So there's a backyard that we both share, but we're enclosed by a wall. So it's 100%, according to Torah, a private domain. There's no reason why I shouldn't be allowed to carry to my backyard and you carry to your backyard. It's all good. Everyone should be able to carry in and out, no problem. Happened was, Shlomo HaMelech said, this kind of looks like a public domain. Why? Because it's being shared by more than one group. By my family, your family, another family. So we all have this area together. So Shlomo HaMelech said, even though it's not a public domain, it's a private domain, but we're going to make a rule that you cannot use this area on Shabbat. In other words, to carry from your private house to this backyard is going to now be forbidden. You can't do that. Okay? That's called using the chatzer. Now, Shlomo HaMelech said, but I'll give you a way out. If each family gives on Friday a loaf of bread to one of the three families, so then what they're doing is they're making it as if they live all in one house. So therefore, since they did that, they can now use the common courtyard together, because it isn't a public domain. It isn't 3 families anymore. It's just one family.
Every week.
Oh, so great question. So technically, if you're using bread, the bread goes bad after a few days, so it's every week. So there's a way of doing it once a year. If you use matzah, and that's what a lot of them do. They make a matzah, it's dry. They wrap it up in a plastic bag or something. And that's what unites all of the families. Now, by the way, this is done till this day when we put a string around the city. So then it makes it as if we're all living in one shared courtyard. But the problem is that one shared courtyard is still a problem. You still need to make Eruv Chatzerot. I'll tell you where this comes up practically till this day. Let's say you live in a place without an Eruv. For example, you're in Brooklyn. And you need to carry from you have a 3-family house. You want to go from your apartment to the steps and bring things in and out, etc. There's a common shared stairway between the 3 families. So can you carry from in and out? The answer is no, unless you make Eruv Chatzerot. And you have to take this matzah, you have to be mezaket, as we learned already, the concept of zikui, where you give it to somebody else who then lifts it up and acquires it for the other 3 families. And then it's now as if they all have this one matzah together. You make a special blessing. And now, presto, you can carry from inside to outside, etc. What? Sure.
Both neighbors,
Sure.
they have to give each other matzah.
They all do it in one house. So one house has the matzah, that's it. And he doesn't give it to anybody. He just holds it up. He gives it to somebody else to acquire it for the other families. So everyone now has a portion of it. And now we did the mitzvah rule. So it says when Shlomo HaMelech instituted this rule, there was a bat kol, a heavenly voice that came out of Shemaim and said, Beni im chacham libecha, ismach libi gam ani. My son, if your heart is wise, may my heart rejoice as well. So Hashem was very, very happy. Beni im chacham libecha, ismach libi gam ani. May my heart rejoice as well. So Hashem was very happy when Shlomo Melech instituted this rule, and that's something that we need to know as well. So the question that comes up is like this. So when you're in a hotel on Shabbat, you have many, 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 many different people here in many different rooms, and can you carry in a hotel on Shabbat? Let's say you find yourself somewhere over here in, I don't know, the Bahamas somewhere, hotel on Shabbat, all kinds of hundreds of families on a cruise and whatever, wherever you may be. Can you carry?
So
I'm in a hotel. It's surrounded by 4 walls, right?
So you're not
Remember,
outside.
Remember. The whole point over here is that even though it's 100% private, it's considered a private domain. It's considered to be a private domain. But since multiple families have access to shared rooms, to shared areas, that's where Shlomo HaMelech stepped in and said, oops, this looks too much like a public domain. You can't carry there unless you make an eruv. And eruv does not mean strings over here, because you don't need strings. It's surrounded anyway. Eruv means that you unite by giving everybody matzah or however you want to do it.
So they do that for fun?
So that's the big question. Is that necessary or not? So the answer is very interesting.
Giving everybody a gift?
Yeah, you take a matzah and you say, and you give it to me,
Matzah or anything
some
else?
food, right? And I lift it up and I say, I'm hereby acquiring this matzah for everybody in this vicinity, in this boat or in this hotel or whatever it is. Do I need to do that? Yes or no? Now it's a lot. It's much more complicated than what I'm saying as well. I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can.
What
So
if someone has a very, very large house and they have a lot of family? So
it's just your house. They're coming to your house.
no, but let's say someone has like a huge house.
That's great,
Lot
but
of
it's
things,
one person's house.
and they
The
have a
question
lot of
here is
fam-
that it's multiple houses, multiple families that have different domains.
let's say they bring like you have guests over the weekend and you have multiple families.
The point is, it's not their house.
Oh,
We're
it's not
talking
theirs.
about where this guy has a house, you have a house, and you share a common backyard or a common front yard, whatever it is. So you have rights, he has rights. Over here, only you have rights. They're coming to your place, right? That's good. Okay, so over here, the answer is very interesting. There are a couple of important things that can determine whether or not you can carry there. So first of all, can they kick you out of your room? If when you sign your agreement with the hotel, so then they say, look, if we ever need to remove you from this room for whatever reason, we reserve the right to do that. That means that they retain full ownership of the hotel. You're not renting the space. They could kick you out at any given moment because they need to make repairs, they need to whatever. So then it's considered to be theirs. It's not yours. So it's one owner, and therefore you can carry them. That's a one telltale sign, which is important to know. There are a couple of other ways of doing it. If let's say there's a common kitchen and you're there for less than 30 days, which is a temporary guest, and there are heavy appliances, perhaps, furniture, beds, stoves, etc. So then all those things make it the jurisdiction of the hotel. So it's not just like an Airbnb. Well, maybe that is the same thing, but the point is that their stuff is there. So they are showing you that this is our area over here. And therefore, it could be that it makes it all one united area. That's important, which I believe is the case by most hotels. Most hotels, I think, they have big furniture here and there, so therefore you would be allowed to carry.
What if you're in a dorm? Let's say you're dorming, like in a university.
Yeah,
or in a
that's a
college.
good question.
Men have to go to minyan. You have
Excellent question.
keys.
It depends
And
on
you're
the
in
setup.
city.
That's a good question because the question is going to be, sorry, is it something that
You
they
need to eat,
can
like
kick you
that.
out, or no, you have an apartment now, you have rights to this place. If it's more like an apartment and you have your own key and nobody can come in, you rented it basically, so then you're right, you need eruv chatzerot. If they could kick you out at any given moment and put you somewhere else, relocate you to another room, then that would need eruv. That would not need eruv. I mean to say. I'm sorry, is the concept clear to everybody? Yes or no? 100%?
Yeah.
No? Convincing or no? Okay. All right. Well, let's just get the idea clear. Okay. When it comes to a hospital, I saw a couple of important points about the hospital. The idea that a hospital has so many important tools, different machines, oxygen machines, all different kinds of things that are there. Equipment, expensive equipment. So the room belongs to them, doesn't belong to you. So therefore, the hospital is considered one domain. Thanks. One domain, and therefore you could carry there. Inside the hospital ground. Inside the hospital ground. You understand? Why? Because it's theirs. You understand that? Okay. Thank you.
But you can't go to synagogue across the street and bring
And
it
carry.
down.
Correct. You cannot.
Wow.
Yeah,
You can't
because that would be carrying outside of
So
the
you
private
can have a
domain.
stroller and go to synagogue in Manhattan, but everybody does.
So it depends. So there could be
So many
an
people.
argument made for the eruv in Manhattan, right? If somebody can come up with a good argument, so that they're relying on that idea. But the problem is many poskim disagree and hold that, again, this is an isur d'oraita we're talking about. We're talking about one of the 39 melachot, like the melacha itself, not a derivative of the melacha. The primary category melacha, carrying in a public domain. So you want to be strict.
If you want to be
Again,
religious.
everybody with their own thing, you know what I'm saying?
No,
I lived in Brooklyn for 4 years. We couldn't carry. It was a little frustrating, but that's what it is.
but so what about your keys?
Yeah.
How about a person is EpiPen, let's say?
Excellent question.
What question? EpiPen.
It's very important to be aware. Very good. Again, if there's ever a question of pikuach nefesh, real pikuach nefesh, that's real pikuach nefesh.
Yeah.
That's, God forbid, somebody gets stuck with an allergy to something, and they don't have treatment in seconds. God forbid, that could really kill the person, right? You see what I'm saying? You're familiar with?
Can you also for someone, for like a child or something?
So for
If the
it would be,
child-
I think it would be better for a child that
Yeah.
can't do it on their own. Yes,
First I asked
yes.
if the person can carry
Person should
themselves.
carry themselves. Let's say God forbid somebody has asthma and asthma attack can knock the guy out. God forbid, you should carry it, even if there's no eruv. Because God forbid if it happens, remember, we are mechalel Shabbat even for safek pikuach nefesh. Safek pikuach nefesh means even if it's a doubt, a maybe. God forbid, a maybe is enough of a reason to. So if let's say the guy knows that it's sometimes he can't breathe. The guy can't, he's stuck, he can't breathe. What's he gonna do now? He has to have it. Right? So very important to take care of that. Okay. Yes.
We have like a hospital or hotel that have like an outdoor area, but it's part of the hospital.
But you're outside the four walls now. You're no longer surrounded by the four walls. So you have just left the private domain that you came out to the public domain.
Even if it's like the hotel, like backyard or something,
Hotels, backyard. Yeah, still you're outside.
it has to be like a typical wall.
Even if it's, let's say, your own house. Your own house. Okay? And you step outside your house. Right? So you have now gone from private domain to public domain.
Even if you own that,
Yes, it's not about ownership. It's about, are you in four walls or out of four walls? Understand? That's part of the thing. So even if, let's say, you're in an area where it's just a Carmelit, like for example, you don't have 600,000 people traveling through that area every day. So it's still forbidden because it's a Carmelit, but that doesn't allow you to go outside. Even if it's your own property, you could make your own private eruv, right, on your own property. That's helpful. I've seen people
That's
do
very
that.
cute.
Yeah.
What about Yerushalayim? I don't know. I live there, I never thought about it, knew about it.
If it's in the old city, if it's a city, the Gemara says, the
I would
Halacha says, if it's in a city that has walls and they lock the doors of the city, then even though inside there are plenty of public domains, that's a different story.
So in Yerushalayim, are you allowed to carry? I never.
They don't
even
lock the
thought-
doors. They don't lock the doors.
So you're not allowed to carry?
I don't think so. No, no. I'm talking about where there's the same where there's just based on the walls alone. I'm talking about the walls alone. I mean, most of Yerushalayim has eruvim.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a different story.
At least
Yeah,
I was good in Israel.
yeah.
Could we carry our Sidur and Chumash, our own Sidur and Chumash?
Where?
To Seneca here.
In Great Neck?
Without, yes.
In Great Neck, you can carry
No,
whatever
no,
you want.
Without an air.
Without air,
No,
no?
no, you cannot carry anything unless God forbid it's life-threatening. You know, EpiPen, inhaler,
A
you know,
Band-Aid.
like that. A Band-Aid is not
No,
life-threatening.
it's not like.
No, right? Okay.
In Brooklyn, they have the reading glasses for everyone.
Yes, they have them there at shul already. Now, another important thing which is brought down in this area of halacha is the isur called tchumin. Tchumin means that there's a certain area beyond the boundary of the city that one is not allowed to go. Tchumin, the pasuk in the Torah says, Al yetze ish mimekomo b'yom hashevi'i, which means that on the seventh day on Shabbat, you're not allowed to leave your location. What does that mean practically? So, I mean, what the halakha tells us is that if your city has an end to it, you are only allowed to travel 2,000 amot outside of the city, which means 3,000 feet. That's it. So at that point, 3,000 feet, beyond that, you cannot go beyond that amount after the border, the end of the city. So wherever you have a city, let's say Great Neck, right? Wherever that city ends, if there's ever a point where there's just nothing beyond that area, if we have such a place, you would not be allowed to go 3,000 amot, 3,000 feet rather, beyond that spot. Okay?
Who has that kind
Give
of
us
time?
example.
I'll give you an example. Let's talk about bridges. Okay? Can you walk on the Williamsburg Bridge on Shabbat? Or let's say you're in Far Rockaway. Can you go from Far Rockaway to Long Beach on the Atlantic Bridge on Shabbat?
No.
Well, so that's a certain area where there's just, you're outside, the city has ended, and now you can no longer travel at that point because you're beyond the point of the tchum, right? There's something that's called eruv tchumin, which means that if you decide you need to go to a certain spot on Shabbat and it's beyond your tchum, you can relocate yourself for Shabbat to where you put your food, which is an interesting idea. I could put my food, let's say, in the middle of that bridge, right, before Shabbat, and say, I'm here for Shabbat. So now my new tchum is 3,000 feet this way, that way, in all directions. And if I happen to be living within that radius, so then I can now go 3,000 amot in that direction too. That's called eruv tchumin. Practically speaking, I've never seen anybody do it. It is possible. It's an option. It's there. It's part of the halachot, but it's not really something I've seen done so much. Okay.
Yeah, what if like in Florida, there's like a lot of harbor, like Bay Harbor. I don't know if you know the area. There's a lot of bridges.
There's a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
And they
They have like a lot of like bridges, and but they're not big bridges. Like they're small. Like,
So if it's an area that is small, like let's say for
Small
example
bridge.
Saddle Rock Bridge over here, right? I'm allowed to walk on Saddle Rock Bridge. It's a small bridge. It's not that much of. It's not that big, right? But
You
these
allowed to
bridges
go
I'm
on
talking.
Saddle
One second,
Rock
sorry.
Bridge?
These bridges I'm talking about, they're big. Like Brooklyn Bridge is 5,989 feet. Washington Williamsburg Bridge is 7,308 feet. These are sizes that are by default beyond the tchum, which is an issue. So you have to figure out a way to set yourself up over there if possible, within eruv, in order if you needed to. There are people that find themselves needing to travel, let's say from Brooklyn to a hospital, on Shabbat in the city. So they have to go on the bridge. So you'd have to figure out a way to do that.
what if let's say like it's not your food. Let's say you're going to shul that's over the bridge, and there you're eating.
What?
And let's say you're going over the bridge to shul to eat there.
Mhm.
So is that considered like?
No, because you didn't set up over there. If it's beyond the border of the tchum, so then you can't go. Just by the way, somebody once told me from shul that she likes to go on the pier on Shabbat. She has a pier, a dock, and she likes to take her to Hillim and read on the dock, and right. So you can't do that,
I used to do it
right?
here in Saturn.
Yeah, you can't do that. That's outside of the eruv, because the eruv that we have, part of the eruv is the retaining wall. Retaining wall is the boundary of the eruv. If you cross outside of that, then you would be in violation of Chilul Shabbat. Problem.
But how do we know where it ends?
Well, because there's no string outside of that area. It's just ocean.
Yeah.
So you have to ask yourself, where am I? What am I inside of? I have to be inside of something. So the only thing that over here we still have is that wall. That's part of the eruv. But if you go beyond it, you're outside the eruv. You have to check, by the way, some spots in Great Neck don't have an eruv. In Harbor Hills, there's a certain area that still does not have eruv. You have to know. And then the question becomes, what happens if I'm outside the eruv with stuff? What do I do now? This is important to know, by the way. I want to talk about this for just a second. People have a knee-jerk reaction, which is that if all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, I'm carrying something, I'm not allowed to carry. Let's say I'm in the city, I'm in Brooklyn, and I say to myself, my goodness, I've got tissues in my pocket. First thing I do, take them out, put them down. Big mistake. Don't do that. Why not? Very interesting. In order to do the Melacha of Hotsa'ah, one of the key points about this Melacha, it has two parts. Akira, which means to uproot it from where it was. Hanacha means to put it down in the new location. If, let's say, the Akira, which means to take it out from one domain and to put it down in the other, I didn't put it down in the other domain. I took it out from that domain, walked with it into another domain, came back and put it back down in the same domain. I didn't do Melacha D'Oraita. Why? Because the Akira, which means uprooting it, and the Hanacha, placing it back down, was actually in the same domain. So I didn't really do anything that was D'Oraita. I didn't violate a Torah prohibition. Whereas the guy who takes the tissues out of his pocket and puts them down right where he has them so he stops carrying, well, that guy just put it down in the public domain. So he got himself messed over. That's Hanacha. I put down the tissues in that domain. Big problem. So what's better? Keep walking. Keep walking until you reach the spot. And then when you go to wherever you're going into the house, you're going into the shul, wherever you're going, then put it down. because it was in a public domain that you started off. You continued you started off in a private domain, continued walking through the public domain, did not put it down in the public domain, kept on walking. If you stop walking with the intention of resting, that's called putting it down. So don't do that. Keep walking until you reach wherever you're going, and then take it out.
What
Clear?
if someone has cold
Yeah.
and they have to carry tissue?
Tissue.
They
So,
need tissue.
Yeah.
scarf.
What can you do?
No?
You gotta find a spot and figure something out.
Put scarf.
I've had all
Do they
kinds of
add it to the
scenarios.
scarf? Like,
Not really. Not really.
Masks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would a mask be considered carrying when we had Corona?
So no, at that time it was not
Or
considered
like
carrying
you had
because
a mask chain, if you had a mask chain, and you put a mask on it. that would-
no, at that time it wasn't considered carrying. If you're wearing the mask, because let's say a guy's wearing, some guy I remember seeing him wearing a mask, and I said, "Why are you wearing a mask? It's it's already a couple of years after COVID. Like, well, what's the issue?" He's like, "No, I'm wearing it because I want to stay warm." Okay, so that's not a problem,
Did
right?
they put some tissue inside the mask?
I don't think so. Yeah, that'd be carrying. Yeah, yeah, that's what they do. They just sneeze into it. But the point is you're wearing it like clothing. That's why it would be okay, because you want it to heat you up. You want it to stay on your face to keep yourself warm. If that's why you're wearing it, that would be okay. Okay, guys, I think we can stop over here. There's a lot more to say about this melacha, but I think that for the time being we're good. Maybe we'll do a little bit more. I would like to do mukseh, maybe some laws of sick people on Shabbat. I think then we're done. Alrighty?
Yeah.
Thank you.